Traveling is definitely an essential part of my life. I travel alone to friends, or I even travel alone to gigs. Traveling on airports is pretty easy, I would say, because of the fact that there is the meet and assist service, as they say. But normally you do have to reserve that in front of the flight. So when you have a ticket, when you book a ticket, you have the option to say, okay, there's somebody with a visual impairment over there. And then they can meet you somewhere at an assistant point in the airport. My God, what a trip. Finally arrived. Jeez. Okay. One thing I always do when I arrive somewhere is listening to the radio, because for me that really gives me some sort of an idea what the sounds of the city are. So I always have this like small radio receiver here, and I browse through the radio, and I don't think I will find any trance here, but at least some classical music. This weekend I'm in Manchester, UK. I'm visiting Jake Holt, a friend and blind trance producer, and I want to learn more about how he does things exactly. I'm also working with Daxson, another trance artist, on a collab we'll be releasing later. But first, I'm at Paul Skelton's concert. He's a trance producer and pianist and is doing classical interpretations of trance songs. Yeah, that's easy. Yeah.
Oh,
you played that yesterday also.
Teach you that one, or if you want to pick another
Sure.
one?
Yeah, teach me that one.
Yeah.
All good.
Okay.
So should I move?
Although I'm producing music, I've actually never learned how to play the piano properly, and that seriously slows me down in my workflow. But Paul Skelton is a piano teacher, and I was very honored to get a real piano lesson from him in his studio.
Yeah. It's A minor.
Yeah, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 notes.
You find two, go ahead.
Wow.
Right. So you come over here beside me. Right.
Like, should I?
The next chord, that's the next chord. So your left hand is moved to here. Right.
Right now we are in Borden Moor, Manchester, and we are here to meet Jake Holt. Jake Holt is a prodigy on the piano, on the synthesizer, and he is an absolute hero when it comes to me, and an inspiration when it comes to production and accessible technology, because he's a real expert in that field. And he's just as blind as I am. And it was definitely one of the goals of this project here to meet other blind people who are also into electronic music and production, to see what they're all about and how we do things are similar or different. And this way, of course, get some tips and tricks for you guys who want to make music. Maybe you're blind, maybe you're not, on how to get started. So let's go right into it, and let's find his typically English house here in Northern Moor.
Yo!
Hello!
Hey! What's happening, guys?
That sounds very cool, though.
My name's Jake. I'm from the trance producer duo JTwoO, and I'm 27, and I've been living here all my life in Manchester. Music is everything to me, as you may be able to tell by all the lovely gear we've got around us here. I love making trance music. I love making any kind of music, really, but obviously these days it's trance mostly, 'cause it's like my main thing at the moment. But in the past I've made dubstep, I've made sort of experimental stuff. Basically, if it's got 12 notes and a melody and a beat, I like it. You know?
So tell me a little bit, how did you get into music then? Because I suppose it was something that was already there from pretty early on, right?
Very much so, yes. It was. I was very much into music from an early age. Always growing up listening to everything around me. My older sister would play stuff. She got me into trance music back in the day. She even got me into Hands Up and, funnily enough, and hardcore.
Is it like Every Time We Touch by Cascade?
Yeah, Cascada, Every Time We Touch, Armenian stuff, or like we used to have there was the Scouse House stuff, back in the day as well. There was a place called Wigan Pier that would record sets all the time, and they would release them as compilations. So we had a few of those, and my sister Amy got me into those, and then she created the dance music monster, basically, in me. One day, I heard SL2 on a ragga tip, that one, samples the Josh Screechy songs and rave track from 1992.
Mm-hmm.
Heard it on a compilation we had, and I was like, I want to make that kind of music when I grow up.
And you do, because you're also a really good piano player, and let's say keyboard player. How did you get into that?
So from a very early age, when I was in primary school, probably, when I was about 5 or 6, they tried to get me into music because they noticed that I was always drumming on the desk and, coming up with rhythmical ideas. And they tried to get me into the drums first. So there was a drum teacher I used to have who we used to do stuff on practice pads, and then we always used to go to the drum kit afterwards, and he was teaching me how to do like 4/4 disco beats and stuff like that. It was really fun. And then I had a piano teacher, and I never really got on with, you wouldn't believe this, but I never really got on with the keyboard at first. It never really clicked with me. So I left it for a few years.
It's a bit like me, but then you got the right decision that you did then.
Yeah, right.
For me, it got really.
Well, I don't know about you, but I know with me, I basically got back into the keyboard again in like 2006 when I was 10, because we got a cheap keyboard from a charity shop or something. I can't remember now where it was, but we found it somewhere, bought it, and then because this was before I even had access to the internet myself, I would just sit there in my room for like hours and hours just practicing melodies and chords and learning songs from the radio and from good old-fashioned CD players and cassettes and stuff. Yeah, I was all into all of that, just learning myself. But I did have some training, but never formal. Like, I never was formally piano trained. Like, I don't do grades or anything like that. A lot of what I've done is through my early studies and then what I've kind of learned along the way.
What would be, some of the goals and objectives that you have for the next few years? Like, what do you see your future to be at in the music industry?
I don't always like to think too far forward, because if I get my expectations too far, then I feel like I won't cope with the rejection as much as I do if I don't keep things in check. But in terms of my dream goals, I would love to play some gigs somewhere, either locally to start out with, and then internationally as well.
Well, maybe I will already have your first international gig for you. Who knows?
Oh man, that'd
if
be
it
great.
works.
Let's see what happens there, right?
No, but I think it's really beautiful also because of, for me, as my hearing degrades and stuff like that, I can also not have that many expectations, because if I wouldn't if I wouldn't be able to do them or whatever, or the circumstances, or I don't know, maybe people just start hating me in the music industry because it's a hard industry, you know, like it's it's a hard industry.
Don't I know it? Right.
Then you know, like when you have these expectations or when you don't have them, then yeah, it's easier to cope with that when you get no's and when you get like, okay, we won't do anything with you anymore and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, you know, you have a track that you've been working so hard on, you send it to a label and they're like, yeah, no. And there's no reason why, they just say, no, we'll pass on that one. Thanks, try again later.
I feel you on that one, though.
I think it's the common producer thing of, you know, you never think it's finished, even though it probably is. But you're never happy with it because it's like, you're always working on it and you always want it to sound the best you can make it. But then what is the best until you actually send it out, right? And the cool thing about it, the actual whole keyboard itself is a touch surface. So I just like... So you can bend in between the notes and you can do all kinds of...
How did the journey start for you when it comes to accessible technology? How did you get yourself into thinking, okay, you know, maybe it is possible to do something with the computer and electronic music production? Because in the time when you started it, I think there wasn't that many resources over there.
No, there wasn't. I was 12. I was, like, you know, in 2008. And when you're a kid, you're really curious about a lot of things. And I'd literally, like, the year before just got access to the internet on my own computer. That was literally my own, not the family computer. So I felt more freedom to actually Google and research things that I felt were interesting to me. So one of the first things I remember Googling was how to make music on a computer. Like, it was with a computer keyboard or whatever. Because I didn't know... I knew what MIDI was, but I didn't know what MIDI controller was or anything like that. Like, all of this was just a foreign concept to me. I was like, what? Anyway. So I remember looking it up, and then I found out there was other people in the blindness community that were working on music, and they were using a lot of hardware and MIDI modules and all this technical stuff that I was like, this looks really cool. So I just kind of went down the rabbit hole and never came back up. Basically. Is that a good quote? I went down the rabbit hole and never came up. And I think every year I learn something new, I go even deeper down that rabbit hole. But yeah.
So what are the tools, the main tools you're using right now to produce and DJ music?
So I'm assuming most people may know what a DAW is, but if you don't, it's basically the hub, the software that you basically produce everything in. Now, as visually impaired and blind people, we have access to two of the most popular DAWs. We have access to Logic Pro, which is Mac-based, right? And we have access to Reaper, which is cross-platform. I mean, it works on Windows, Mac, and Linux. And I use both for different reasons. So I'm primarily based in Mac because I used to be Windows. All my life I was brought up on Windows machines. And then about 11 years ago, I switched to Mac and didn't really look back.
You got lucky, man. Like, I've tried to do that and I was like, really?
It isn't for everyone, man. Like, it's all personal preference, right? And
yeah, because the workflow is so different on a Mac, you know? Like, I wouldn't say anything is better, but like for many Windows users, Mac is like really slow. It doesn't have to be, I know, but you have to really get through that slow phase.
Yeah, well, it's like anything you learn. It's like a new language almost, right?
Yeah.
You kind of have to learn it slowly, and then once you get the basics down, you learn the conjugations, and then once you learn all that, you can learn the shortcuts and slang words and stuff. Well, yeah, it's like that with learning a new operating system. You learn the basics first, then you learn all the key shortcuts, and then you basically learn all the apps around it afterwards. But I think the important thing is that you use what works for you, and a lot more blind people, I would say, it's probably controversial, but are into Windows because there's more support for it. Like, there's more of a community around it. Going back to the DAW thing, so I use both Logic and Reaper. I use Logic mainly for sequencing and for producing the tracks, and I mostly use Reaper for sometimes a bit of sequencing in that if I feel like trying something different. But a lot of the time I use it as an audio editor, so I comp vocals with it. So make a perfect vocal take or whatever if I'm using that for vocals.
Because if I'm understanding it correctly, Reaper is very well suited for audio editing of all kinds.
Yep.
Like and Logic is very well suited for mostly music production, I guess. It's more geared towards that, I think.
For us, definitely. I mean, if you cited, I mean, Logic has a very good audio editing workflow as well.
Yeah.
But what I absolutely love about Reaper is just the fluidity of the interface. Like, you don't have to... On the Mac, you do this thing called interacting with things, where you have to drill down into the interface and find the right thing you're looking for, sort of pseudo-visually. Whereas in the Reaper, you know, if you know you want track 5, you can just arrow down to find track 5. You don't have to interact with a group and then interact with a header and then blah blah blah. You can just go down to track 5, right?
What advice would you give to someone who wants to do music production as a blind person and who would want to start somewhere and doesn't know where to start?
So the straightforward answer is read the forums. There's loads of forums. There's the wiki, the Reaper accessibility wiki. I can't remember the URL off the top of my head, but you just Google it, Reaper accessibility blog, and you'll find it. There's the Logic Pro help forum, which is primarily for sighted people. There's a few blind people on there as well. There's also IC Music, which is a guy that runs it in America, a guy called Byron, and he does actual paid courses. You can actually join those courses and learn Logic and DJ Pro, which is the software we can DJ with. And now I think they're even doing virtual DJ as well, which is cool. There's loads of places now, but when I started in 2008, there wasn't really any. You just kind of had to... There was a few, but it was very sort of hush-hush. People weren't really promoting it as much as they are now. But unlike normal, like this keyboard over here has a pitch bend wheel, so you would normally pitch all the notes at once, like this. Whereas on a keyboard like this, and that pitches everything, whereas on this you can pitch bend one note at a time, so you can go like...
DJing now we have DJ Pro for Mac, which is the only natively accessible DJ app, I think.
Yeah, full stop. It's the only native accessible, period. Yep.
Yeah, and then we have Virtual DJ, which is cross-platform, accessible through somebody else who made
Shouts to Peter.
Yeah. Shouts to Peter. Maybe I will meet him too. I don't know for this project. We'll see. But yeah, and that brings me to like a thing that I wanted to comment on still. Is like there is so many of the things we can use now, mainly Virtual DJ and Reaper, are only there because there are some blind developers who were like, okay, we have some way to interact with the software that we can make the speech software, let's say, understand what to speak out.
Yep.
And that's the only reason why we can work with Reaper. Otherwise, there would be no Reaper for us. And then
also as well, whilst you're on the subject of native accessibility, the only natively accessible DAW, at least to my knowledge, is Logic Pro for Mac.
Yeah, it is. Logic Pro is natively accessible because Apple...
You don't have to add any scripts to it or anything.
Yeah, exactly. And then Reaper is the one that's you have to download a plugin.
Yep.
But I guess that the advantage of that is that the accessibility is made by blind people, so it's made so that you can have a really fast workflow by default. Kind of.
It's made for blind people by blind people.
Yeah, and there's the same with Virtual DJ. That's why I switched also from DJ Pro to Virtual DJ. It's just the workflow is so fast when you want to find tracks.
It's lightning quick, isn't it? It's great.
That is just awesome.
Tell you one thing I'm very excited about though when it comes to accessibility is the prospect of AI and machine learning.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Because we use a thing at the moment to make non-accessible things semi-accessible, in that the screen reader can access it, and it's a thing called OCR, which basically takes an image of the screen and then lets you move the mouse around it with speech. It's really fascinating how that works.
Yeah.
And Apple has a thing on their iPhones called screen recognition, which kind of does a similar thing, but it uses AI to determine what is a button and what is a slider, and it pipes
sort
that
of
to the
works.
screen reader.
Sometimes it doesn't work for me for some reason, but
yeah, but in the future it'll get better, I think.
Yeah.
And once they bring that to the Mac, I think that's going to be a game changer. So
I think so too, and
that'll be brilliant.
I mean, at the moment I'm beta testing for the Be My AI project by Be My Eyes. That's the image analysis capabilities of ChatGPT-4, like GPT-4.
Yep.
It's very, very good at describing images. Unfortunately, they cannot describe faces anymore now. That's like so sad, because I was like putting images of like girls I liked through there to see if I would find them beautiful or not. But now it's like the face is for privacy, so I can't do that anymore now.
Ah, shame.
But they're still working on that one though. I'll tell you which one. This one.
Just keep following the path that you want to follow. Stay inspired. If you're in the music, if you want to be in the music industry, just know that it's a roller coaster ride. But let me tell you, it's one hell of a ride. It's so fun. And if you really enjoy it, even you can learn from the times you get knocked down from rejection from a label. It's nothing personal. There's just a lot of stuff that goes through A&R. And I think if people realize that it's a business and it's not a personal attack on you, then you'll get far in the music industry. As long as you have the drive and motivation to hone in on your craft, find your sound, and just keep working at it, because eventually you'll get there. And just have fun. Stay inspired and have fun. That's really all I can say.
Well, that was quite a learning experience. It was so nice to see Jake in his home studio working and showing me how he does things. And now we're going from studio to studio in Manchester, as I'm taking Jake with me to work with Daxson on a collab we'll be releasing later on this year. So I'm sitting right in front of one of my actual examples here, Mr. Dan Dobson or Daxson. How did you actually get into trance music? Because you have a very specific sound, but how did it all start for you?
Well, I was listening to trance from a very young age, but I didn't actually realise that it was trance.
It was the same as I did. Yeah.
It was just music that was on the radio and on TV. Back then the music was that popular, it was in the charts. So I was listening to it. I would collect the Euphoria CDs by Dave Pearce and the mixed compilations, and I remember I would go on holiday with my family and I would always make my own compilation CD for the holiday, like with all of my favourite tracks.
Now you're playing some of the biggest trance events that there are, I would say, with your unique sound.
Yeah, it's going to be a really good year. It's going to be great having you there as well. I only met you for the first time last year, wasn't it, at Luminosity? We were talking about it earlier, but I think I'd seen you about online before that, and I realised that you were blind then. And I think also you were at Tomorrowland one year when I was there, and you're speaking to Ferry Corsten, but I can't remember if we met.
I remember that year though.
But I don't think we met then. But then for music, it was probably your release on FSOE that we were just speaking about before as well.
Yeah.
Because I handled all the label stuff for that. But yeah, it's really been amazing watching your journey as well, and listening to the amazing music that you come out with, especially the melody for this collab that you sent over. I remember I was in bed. I'd been in the studio all day, and you were like, you promised me that you were going to send me something that day, didn't you?
Yeah.
I got the melody in my mind. I just need to write it out or something. And
yeah,
I was planning on coming to the studio to work on the other melody that you'd already sent to just sort of finish the track, I guess, because I'd done the outro, wasn't it? That could be an intro.
Yeah, you were doing the intro, and then I was like, okay, no, I need something else about it.
I was like, okay, well, what's the worst that can happen? We've got a good melody. Couldn't see anything bad of it. And then I remember I was in bed. It was dead late, like 11 o'clock. I was about to go to sleep, and I listened to it, and I wanted to come straight to the studio. I was like, what? I was like, this melody's like amazing. And I set my alarm for like stupid o'clock in the morning. I was straight to the studio. And then I think I sent you an update maybe later that day or the next day, I can't remember. It was pretty much as it was, wasn't it? Like the chords I wrote instantly.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was, it came together fast, didn't it? Like the way you sent the melody, then I did that. I already had the outro and stuff, so just had to make the melody. But then it's since then it's sort of just took its time to get the mix right, and it seemed to be a never-ending thing. I think I said on the group chat, it's like, oh, it's like it's nice working on it at this stage. It's like when it gets to the mix, I start to hate it, and it's like now I'm at that stage where I'm like sick of it because can't get the mix right.
But I think so that's why that's part of the reason why I'm here with you in the studio now. That's actually, I don't do that very often. Like I'm not very often in actual physical studios of other producers.
Yeah.
Especially because there I cannot really, move the buttons up and down.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, I thought it was fun to do, and like Manchester and all. What are you thinking about how I or reproduce before you knew? Because I told you at a certain point, but I suppose maybe you would have some questions like. What is it? How do the blind people, whatever, produce music? Like, had you any thoughts or questions about that before you knew?
Yeah, well, I'm still intrigued at how you go about it, because I know if my eyesight was took away from us, I would very much struggle to even select a sample or whatever on my computer. So I still, you tried to describe it to me before, but I still don't fully understand how you are able to do the things that you do. It's fascinating. And I remember watching you at Soundcheck as well, like in February when we played Euphoria Festival.
Yeah.
I was just watching you like just on the decks, and I was just like, oh my god, it's like, it's really amazing the way that you're able to just carry on and do the things without sight. It's really inspiring watching you. Yeah, I think the hardest bit is when you're working on stuff and nothing is happening. Like now things are happening for both of us, so that in itself is motivating. But a few years ago things weren't happening, and that's the difficult time to sort of keep going when it's like in the back of your mind it's like, what happens if like nothing, like what happens if I don't get gigs, what happens if people don't like my music? But if you've got the passion and it's inside of you, then that's quite hard to lose, I think. And it is a shame a lot when people give up, because I think that is the main reason why a lot of people don't make it, is because they've simply just not believed that they are going to make it and they've given up. Whereas if they just kept going, then they will eventually get a break and start getting some shows. So my advice would be to, as hard as it is, to just keep going and make the music that makes you feel good, rather than trying to make something that you think other people like. If you're writing from the heart and you feel it, then I think other people will, or somebody will feel that music, because like music is universal, isn't it? Yeah, it is important to have the connections. ADE is good place to meet people like that, but it's quite daunting, especially if you're coming into the scene and you haven't got a name and nobody knows who you are. It's quite daunting to get to know other artists, but that's what ADE is for. If you go to somewhere like the Black Hole Mix, it's a great opportunity to meet people that you've heard of, and get to speak to them there. But connections opens a lot of doors, and I think meeting people face to face is a lot easier than online, and it goes a long way.
But it's too much, I guess, for you.
It's like there's like weird frequencies coming out, and
US, I had it a few times where they forgot me at the gate, and lucky that I also have a mouth to ask things to people. Otherwise I would have missed my flights to San Francisco and to Seattle at some point. It is possible to actually get to know airports if you are visiting them quite a lot. I know a lot of blind people who do that very often, and it is also possible to figure some things out with technology. For example, there is an app called Seeing AI, and that app can scan for text in the camera. So for example, you can walk through a departure hall and then
just have the app open and it will read you the gate signs and letters when it sees them in the camera. Another option which I haven't really used that much yet is Ira, and Ira is also a service where you can either have VR glasses or AR glasses or your phone, and a trained professional looks at your camera and guides you through the airport, and then you can find stuff like that. I know that people in the States use that a lot, but really a lot. And I'm definitely going to experiment with that more as this project goes on. Now, for me, to be honest, if I need help, I sometimes like to do it the old school way, and I do like to just ask someone. And there's also a trick that really works well, which is just playing the lost blind kid. You know, just look a bit lost and people will come to you, especially, you know, in countries where helping is very much in the DNA, like here in the UK, for example. And they will come up to you and ask you what you want, and if you need to go somewhere. And I do it like this in trains and in airports all the time if I don't know the way and if there is no assistance available. The funniest experience I had with live assistance is when I got to the US and I actually got connected to somebody who didn't know English. So, I mean, I wanted to explain how my bag was looking. I even asked somebody before what the color was because my bag was on the, and the person just didn't understand. So, luckily there was somebody in the, who was with me in the flight who was seeing what was happening and who came to the rescue and was like, hey, I think that's your bag. I'm currently helping with the beta of Be My AI. That's the product of Be My Eyes. Is an app that you can call somebody for free and they look at your camera and then they can guide you. They're volunteers, so no trained professionals like Ara. But now they have something new, which is that you can take a picture of your environment, and the OpenAI GPT-4 model will describe you what's happening. I'm now in the beta of that one. It's not publicly available yet, but I'm testing that right now. And also Ira is sponsoring Flight for Sight, and so also this project, so I would have to I also got some minutes to use that one and see how that works. However, of course, that's not AI, that is with actual trained professionals who help you, so who are trained in guiding blind people around. So. I was just looking around with seeing AI, which was just recognizing text that it sees all around, like it was recognizing text of the bars, of doors of the toilets, of gate numbers. For example, we are not so far from gate 50, gate 49, and like that I can orient myself a little bit on how, you know, where approximately I may be here in this departure lounge. I'm gonna try another tool now, which is like the Be My AI. It described to me that I took a picture of it said to me that I take a picture of possibly an airport lounge or cafe. It described to me that it saw like a few tables, high tables.
The picture shows an indoor setting, possibly an airport lounge or a cafe. There are two men sitting at a high table near a large window. The man on the left is wearing a black suit and is looking at his phone. The man on the right is wearing an orange shirt with the word Paulix written on the back and a cap. He is also looking at his phone. There is a large orange suitcase on the left side of the picture. The floor has a wooden pattern and there are pendant lights hanging above the table. Through the window, you can see a runway or tarmac and it appears to be a cloudy day outside.
Number one, don't be afraid. It's really important to not be afraid to ask people for help or to come up to people. I find it sometimes very difficult myself because, believe it or not, I have an introvert side, and asking people for help is some sort of like a draining thing for me. If I have to do it a whole day, especially when I'm tired after a gig like right now, it is quite a draining task. Two, know your boundaries. If you're not comfortable with somebody helping you or somebody grabbing your your collar and dragging you around, let them know. Also, for the professional assistants, don't be afraid to tell them how you would like to be helped, because it's different for everyone. Some people can follow, some people like arms, some people want even a wheelchair. I don't mind, like it happens, but don't be afraid to ask. For me, for example, in the States, it happens all the time that people want to put me in a wheelchair, even if I don't want to. And I have to really, really sometimes get mad at the assistant, like, no, I do not want a wheelchair because I can walk and I actually want to walk, you know? And that's the thing. It's also the reason why some people in the States don't do meet and assists, because it's, you know, they always get put in a wheelchair. Number 3, getting lost is okay. You know, getting lost is the first part of getting found again. So if you try something and you get somewhere where you don't know where you are, that's really okay. And it's fine to do that for a while, and to, you know, explore a little bit, and getting lost is part of that. And sometimes it's even fine to say no to somebody who wants to help you if you feel like exploring a bit for yourself. And that leads me to number 4, which is take your time. If you want to explore a place alone in an airport, go there early so that you have time to actually get lost and found. Number 5, trust in humanity. Because if you cannot do something alone, especially in big cities and stuff, there's always people around that can help and who will help and who want to help. But you have to trust that it will be okay. And I know there is a very slight minority of cases where maybe people don't have good intentions, but, you know, humanity is there and they usually like and want to help. So trusting that it will be fine in the end is another good tip.